Yes,
So Weiser. Yeah, so much for
Now batting for Pedro Bourbon, Manny Mota.
Do you have wine?
I think we're good. I want to thank the folks here at Pagosa for hosting us. Hopefully the folks can. Thankfully, tremendous turnout. A little closer. I'm a big believer in the importance of self-governance and we the people, which means it's really important to hear from people all across the state. I want to start with what's heavy on my heart. Not one, but two tragic shootings today. I'm going to get an update about Evergreen High School in a little bit. And at this point, we don't have any fatalities, but it's not clear. You've heard more than I have?
no worries.
Yeah, well, I'll get to the second shooting in a minute. The Evergreen one, as I mentioned, is close to home, but another one is one that's of national significance.
I got it.
Is that?
I got it today.
Where disappeared to? As I think most people know here, Charlie Kirk has now been killed in a shooting, and it is, to me, a call to turn down the temperature. In America, we the people use our voices, speech, to settle differences. And I'm a big believer that if you don't like someone's point of view, someone's speech, the right response is more speech. The right response is never violence. We've got to hold on to this republic, and that means that we learn to live and listen and govern ourselves without resort to violence. I am fortunate enough to having had worked with Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg and could witness firsthand her relationship with Justice Antonin Scalia. And a lot of people would say, how could the two of you be friends? And she would say, well, we like similar things. And neither of them were afraid of a good argument. Both believe that steel sharpens steel. Charlie Kirk wasn't afraid of a good argument. Charlie Kirk believed in dialogue and showing up. And it's tragic that whoever took this action thought that that might be an okay thing to do. It is tragic that it's today in Evergreen. And the details haven't come out yet about who the shooter is. But there's obviously a lot of reflection that all of us will do. A lot of hurting in the Kirk family, in Evergreen right now. And that's heavy on my mind. And I know it's on yours as well. I am here truly because I want to listen and hear what's on your mind. This is a series of conversations that I've had going back to when I was first running to be Attorney General, and I literally, before coming here, went by the Pagosa County and bought some rugelach, which I will tell you, as a connoisseur of rugelach, I am biased towards my grandmother's recipe, but I will say Pagosa Baking Company's got some of the very best rugelach I've ever had. For real. Let me leave it there for now and open up the conversation for people's comments, questions, suggestions. Whatever's on your mind. Yes, please introduce yourself as well.
Jane Weiser. I'm a full-time Pagosa personalized donate to my cause. And what's being done with the money I've donated? What else can I be doing?
There are a number of points there, and what I want to say is there are multiple ways that being a citizen has a range of responsibilities and opportunities. yes, you can consider, when the spirit moves you, donating to those of us running for office. But that should not be your sole or even primary form of civic engagement. So let me talk about, because this is a great question to start on, which is how do we as citizens engage at this moment when it feels like our republic is hanging by a thread? One point I want to emphasize is the importance of organizing and using our collective voice. I get a lot of different versions of questions, like if something's really happening that concerns me, how do I show my frustration? How do I express my point of view? And this gets back to where I started, which is the importance of showing up and using your voice. I'm a big believer that I believe in the American people, and I believe in the project of American democracy. I believe as long as good people continue to be engaged, show up and use our voice, we are going to hold this republic. Next point down, how do I use my voice? Showing up here when someone who represents you to share what's on your mind is really important. And if your representatives don't make themselves available, then you should criticize them in letters to the editor, protest outside their office, and say, why won't you show up for any town hall conversations? Writing to elected officials, it really does matter. Calling their offices, it matters. They're hearing what people are saying. A lot of people said to me, this HR 1 bill that's going to be really harmful to rural hospitals, for example, they're concerned about it. So tell your member of Congress, I'm concerned about this. I'm concerned about the cost of healthcare and what this bill might do about it. It's also obvious that part of living a democracy means you have elections, which means we got to get people organized and out to vote. I know we've got some good organizers here. Don't sit out elections. That's a chance for your voice to be heard. Before you know it, in March, there are going to be caucuses, Democratic caucuses, Republican caucuses, picking candidates to run for a range of offices. You can get involved and organize. You can show up and make your voice heard. What I've seen in Colorado is we really work hard to make sure that people's voices can be heard and lifted up. It's among the most meaningful work I've done. I'm here in Southwest Colorado with you today. I'll be in Cortez on Friday. I'll be at events tomorrow in Durango. And I continue to come back regularly, and some of you show up and see me at different times. And that's what we should expect of our leaders. And the reason I do it, because citizens show up and care. And there's lots of ways you keep showing that. Does that help a little bit?
Yes.
Thank you. Great question to start off the conversation. Yes? Yeah, go ahead.
Hi, Emily Lashbrook, Pagosa Springs Community Development. I have two topics for you today, sir.
Yeah.
One is Prop 123 is not working in rural Colorado. The whole eastern slope of Colorado has not applied for one dime because it doesn't work. So let's refocus Prop 123 to what our voters voted on to help rural Colorado build affordable housing. Number two is broadband fiber on Wolf Creek. 2.5 years ago, we met with you in Crested Butte. Today, they have settled with the contractor that was paid for by public funding, and we still cannot access that fiber. Anything you can do to help us budge that or move that, because this affects our entire state in the southwest sector of the state.
Thank you for both the points. This is Mindy with me. One of the things I did in my office is hire, first time it's ever happened, a rural outreach director to make sure we engage with our rural communities. And your name again was?
Emily Lashbrook.
Emily, right, Emily. I remember this Wolf Creek conversation, and I am pained that our state's Department of Transportation has been, let's put this kindly, a challenge to work with on this issue. I'm going to see Shaq and Cortez, talk about the same issue. I will work with you very hard in my current role, where the best tools I have are to be a nudge, which is a more effective nudge than the average person, because we do represent them, and so they have to listen to me.
But I will tell you, I haven't been able to change their mindset. It's possible that I'll be able to come back here later where my position will be a different one and they will be having to report to me, and then we'll be in a different situation. But right now, consider me an ally with you on this. I recognize the importance. By the way, not everyone here is as deep in the weeds as Emily, so let me explain a little bit. If we miss this opportunity to build effective, you hear this phrase sometime, backbone networks or middle mile networks. And the way you want to build them is you want to build them like as a ring. So if one fiber gets cut, you are able to send the information a different way, and it is called self-healing. I just spoke to someone who's with the tribe, Southern Ute Tribe. They've not had 911 service for 4 days. Okay? That's what happens when you don't have sufficient fiber infrastructure to protect you. We have a lot of federal money coming our way to Colorado. If we don't manage it appropriately, including building these middle mile networks, like, what the F? So, I hear this point, I want to work with you. Make sure Mindy's got your information. I'm going to talk, you're working with Shaq on this too, right?
Yes.
Yeah, we're talking to Shaq on it. I'm going to keep trying to get to the bottom of this. I can't give you a good answer why it's been this hard. It's been frustrating for me too. Emily's other point is also one that I want to lift up. And Emily, do you know Amy Johnson, who lives in Kit Carson, by any chance?
Yes.
So Amy told me the same thing. Amy said the same thing. Emily said Prop 123 doesn't work. And she referred to a phenomenon, I don't know if that is at all true in Pagosa, she called it an inverted housing market, where it's more expensive, way more, to build something new than it is to rehabilitate something that might already be there. And for reasons that I couldn't explain to you right now, but I trust that she got this right, Prop 123 funds aren't working for those communities. And I did put this publicly, by the way, out. I can point it to you, and I cited Amy, committing to want to fix this. At this point, again, I'm only in a position of being able to nudge them to do the right thing, but I hope that I'll be in a position at some point to actually, I don't mean to be cryptic. I am running to be next governor. I did not schedule this as a political event, so I'm being a little more cryptic about my future political journey and being a little bit more staking within my current job. But part of why I want to be next governor is there's things I'm now, as Attorney General, advising on. Prop 123, broadband. And I'm frustrated we're not doing better, particularly for rural Colorado about these issues. And that's a big reason why I want to run to be in a different job where I'll have more direct oversight as opposed to being in the advisory role. And great points. We'll follow up with you on both, so you can do.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, please.
Hi, my name is Alex Bamer. I'm on the Pagosa Area Water and Sanitation District's Board of Directors. I serve as the Treasurer and Vice Chairman. So we have a Reg 31, which is a federal thing through the EPA. It's going to lower the nitrogen levels of the discharged treated sewer water. And the Trump administration is talking about undoing that mandate. And what is your opinion? And I guess if this is not a political event, but if you could cryptically answer for me, maybe, as to would you be in favor of Colorado continuing to push that mandate without the federal government ensuring it? It would cost each of our ratepayers in my district roughly $15,000 per person or per household to meet that specification. So. Are you be willing to bypass that? And if not, at what point is the EPA regulations? When is our water clean enough?
Really good question. I want to acknowledge another team member here. Many of you know Christian Champagne as your former elected district attorney. I now know him as senior counsel in our Department of Law. Christian has joined us to help us with our rural law enforcement work, and has been doing incredible work and wanted to join us here today with former constituents and being a part of our team. Thank you guys for coming. Yes, give Chris a round of applause. Come on. All right, a really good question, and I'm going to have Mindy get your information as well. Before I worked for Justice Ginsburg, I worked for a different judge. It taught me an incredibly important lesson. I am not afraid of what I don't know. I'm afraid of what I think I know. I have no idea what you just said.
Honesty is key.
Yeah, so, but having learned, I understand that this community is forced to do a substantial upgrade to protect water quality. And it's possible that the reason for the upgrade in EPA regulation might be voided. And then the next question is, what would the state do if that happens? And because I don't know about these, my answer is I don't know. What I will tell you is we need to make sure that we're being sensible and supporting particularly more rural, low-resource communities on issues where you may not have an easy solve. And I know this community has had challenges along those lines, and we want to figure out how to work with you. So please make sure Mindy's got your information, and let's talk a little bit more about this. And I would very much like to get ahead of this issue, understand it, and see how we figure out what the best way forward is.
I'm gonna give her my information. I
Great.
have to go, and it has nothing to do with your answer.
Okay, good. Thank you. Thank you very much. Appreciate it. Other questions? Yes, please.
When you do, I'm Teresa.
Yes.
I'm also a resident. When you do decide to run as governor, how will your policies be different from our current governor?
So I want to be clear, I have decided I am a candidate to be governor. I just organized this as me as Attorney General checking in. And so I didn't organize this as a political event. Or to put it differently, I wanted to make sure everyone in the community knew they were welcome, whether they had any interest in supporting me as a future governor or not. I will still answer your question, which is how will I be different as a governor than our current governor? And the answer is actually the way we lead currently is a good place to start. My focus, particularly when it comes to local governments and rural communities, is first and foremost on making sure I'm showing up, really listening, and working to be collaborative. And that's an area that if you look at the work we've done on the opioid crisis, I just met with your regional body called SWORD. I'm very much a believer in my role is to support and lift you all up, not to tell you what to do because I've got all the answers. And we just had a conversation with SWORD. That's a conversation we've been having for 6 years. And at no point in the conversation has it ever been me saying, you need to do X. It's, you need to figure out what's right for your community. I'll share with you some ideas. I'll share with you, here's what other communities have done. And my goal is, how do I help? And so that's going to be my style, my orientation. And there currently, and unfortunately, is litigation going on between local governments and the state, particularly around housing, where the policy of the state is a little bit more on the directive side, less on the consultative side. We got more questions. Yeah, go ahead.
So I just wanted to make a comment that I appreciate you really emphasizing you being a collaborative person, and I think that's wonderful. And in your role as the Attorney General and your role as Governor, I think at some level there's collaboration with agencies and organizations, and collaboration with community residents. I think that community residents often don't have voices, and so agencies speak on their behalf. How are you able to be a little bit different so that the agencies, we talked about Department of Transportation, some of the other agencies that currently you all are supporting through legal support, how are you making sure that the individual is not forgotten in their issues with the transportation or the other departments that you're representing?
Thank you for the question. I'll repeat it in case people didn't hear it all. The question was, It is a appealing vision to say you're committed to making sure you're listening and you're consulting with communities. In practice, in reference to Emily's point about the Department of Transportation, sometimes between that vision and our reality, the agency who's on the job isn't listening to us. They're not consulting with us, and we're being told to do stuff that we don't think makes sense, or we're doing things that may be a lot more expensive or otherwise a problem. How will you, as governor, or how could a governor, ensure that there's alignment between the vision of really listening and consulting and how agencies operate? And I often consider myself both a public servant of the public, and someone who's a student of how government works at the same time. So I've got this front row seat, I'm watching how the Department of Transportation is working, and sometimes it's a way to take a little the edge off and say, that's interesting, why are they approaching it this way? And one of the explanations to your question is a lot of government agencies have their own bureaucratic inertia. They keep doing things the way they've always been doing them. And if you want to be a leader who changes how government operates, that requires changing culture. And I often say this, a lot of government, it doesn't matter. Is it a Democrat in charge or a Republican in charge? It's, do you have an innovator in charge? Or do you have someone who's basically allowing government to keep operating on autopilot? Because most of the time, most of government is just doing what they've always been doing. Now I'm going to tell you about my mindset is 100% an innovative mindset. And I'm going to tell you a story about how I've done that as Attorney General and how I believe we should run our state. When I was having conversations like this 8 years ago, I was in Trinidad, Colorado. I heard something similar to what Emily said. It was about the housing stock there, where they had a lot of homes that had asbestos in it. They were dilapidated. And they said it's really expensive to try to fix all this, so it just stays the way it is, and we have all this housing that's now abandoned, and there's people who moved in who are drug users, it's become blight. What can you do about this? And I said, I don't know. When I become Attorney General, I'm going to find out. And I went ahead and got into the office. Quick second here. Thank you all. This is an incredible turnout. Really, middle of the day, thank you guys so much. I'm grateful. The answer I got is, yeah, we actually do something on housing. I'm like, oh really? What is the, hey, good to see you. Thanks for coming. What's the story? They say, oh, we have $60 million we got because we sued the big banks for the foreclosure mess, and we have to spend all the money addressing housing. I said, oh, that's great. How much of that money's been spent? The answer was 50 million of the 60 million. I said, okay. And then I asked the question, how much has been spent in the lower third of our state, say south of Pueblo? You guys know the answer, right? Zero. Why was zero spent? Because the agency doing this was operating on autopilot. They had the programs that they knew and that they were using, but they weren't serving communities like Southeast Colorado. Now, I said, that's a problem for me. That doesn't work for me. We are creating a new program. We call it the Colorado Partnership for Education and Rural Revitalization. The way we did it is I got together the 4 community colleges. So Pueblo Community College, including the campus not too far from here. Trinidad, which also has a presence in Alamosa. Lamar, and Otero. And we created a program to teach people how to remediate homes. And they're now graduates, and I just was at a funeral for friends in Lamar, and I heard graduates in this program have created their own construction rehabilitation outfit in Lamar, they're running a business, helping what I thought was a win 3 times over, because you create more housing opportunities, you lift up neighborhoods, and you create jobs. And there's another piece of the story too. When I go to Pagosa County, Springfield, talk to the county commissioner there, her name is Spike, right? Spike would say to me, this asbestos issue is really a problem. It's too expensive to remediate asbestos. It turns out the Department of Public Health and Environment could be eligible for federal money in a federal program to remediate asbestos, but we had to pass a state law and put some modest matching money in. It had never been done. So Spike's like, Phil, gotta do something. So I, using my powers of being a judge, sometimes it works, pushed our state speaker of the House to do something. And she's like, well, who are you working with on this? And I mentioned a friend of mine from Boulder who's in the state House. And she said, wait, why is this guy in Boulder working on this if it's Southeast Colorado? She said, I'm gonna get Ty Winter, who's the state rep for Southeast Colorado, involved. My friend from Boulder, Kyle, said, we don't see eye to eye that much, but for you, I'm gonna work with Ty on this bill. The bill got passed. We set up a program, and we now have a program to remediate asbestos and get these brownfield grants. So my point is, yes, it's hard to change the culture of how agencies operate. It's hard to move in an individual direction, but the answer to your question is you gotta set that tone from the top. And you gotta make sure you're being accountable to people. When Roy Wilmer was governor, he would go all across the state, he called it capital on the range. And you hear from people. And what Roy has told me is these conversations, they ground you. They're a reality check, what's happening. And that's why I make it a priority to end up people like needing help. Sorry for the long answer, really good question.
Excuse me. My name is Santos Ocañas. What have you done or plan to do to protect minorities from ICE? The other question is, what happens? What's going to happen if you are governor and the president decides to take over the National Guard? And how many Hispanos are in top levels in your office?
Let me take your second question first. My head of consumer protection is Hispanic. My head of communications, my communications chief, Mark Pacheco, is Hispanic. And my head of Division of Community Development, Vanessa Devereaux, is Hispanic from San Luis. Vanessa is the one who actually hired you to this COPPA program first, and then I promoted her. I've also had Maritza Dominguez-Braswell, who's a deputy, who's now on the federal court bench, as well as Catherine Scarnella, who's also someone we had as a leadership in her office. She's now on the federal court bench as well. And then Matt Baca, who had been head of community development, is now head of legal services. When I became Attorney General, Monica Marquez said to me, Ken Salazar was Attorney General and did a lot of important work promoting women, promoting Hispanics. Phil, that's what you need to do. And I've thought about the individual names I just mentioned as part of how I'm ensuring that we are having a diverse leadership in our state and promoting future leaders. With respect to ICE, this week has been a tough week. Every week's a tough week. This is a tough week. The Supreme Court had a ruling where they said, if you are brown, if you speak Spanish, and if you're in a low-wage job, you're vulnerable to basically being taken, and ICE, who, like you said, wearing masks, grab people. I believe we're going to get to, on the other side, after we get through this challenging time, a period of time that we will have a sensible, a fair, and a legal immigration system. The way our immigration system, I believe, should work, it's very important we have a secure border, and it's important that we have processes that function in a rational way so people know what to expect, are treated fairly, and are given due process of law, which is a requirement in the 14th Amendment of the Constitution. What's happening right now is people are worried about, for good reason, being grabbed indiscriminately and having their process be upended in ways that are unfair and may violate the law. What do I mean by that? So many people who are here and immigrants are in all sorts of different situations. This is not a like simple, either you're totally like 100% kosher, certified, everyth's right, or you came here without authorization, you should be deported because you committed crimes or something. Turns out, in the real world, there's all sorts of grades. Someone overstayed their visa, they're married to somebody, they've got kids who are US citizens, their spouse is a citizen, and they've got a work permit, or they've got a pending application for asylum, or they are in the process to become a citizen, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And what is so awful right now is no matter what your exact status is, you're wondering, am I safe? People who are US citizens are saying, do I have to carry around my passport all the time because I could be shipped off to another country? First point I want to emphasize, and it's important that we have the right communication channels, make sure to connect with Mindy and Christian about this. If ICE does show up, say in this community, we need to figure out, to the best of our ability, who is being taken, where are they being taken, and we've got to make sure they're being honored with due process of law so that they can have the chance to be represented. And we've worked separately with the Colorado Lawyers Committee to build the Volunteer Lawyers Network, so everyone's treated fairly. That's the promise of what America should be, a land where we treat everybody fairly. I am here as a first-generation American. My mom and my grandmother were, and grandfather came here as refugees, having survived the Holocaust. I believe in the promise that America is a nation that we welcome people, and unless you're indigenous somewhere in your ancestors, someone came here. And so we need to recognize immigration is a strength, and we need to build a sound immigration policy. But right now, as you put your finger on it, we have this challenge with ICE. We're not sure how they're going to operate. So we got to keep our eyes on them, and we got to protect due process of law. Number two, in Colorado, law enforcement does law enforcement, period. Law enforcement does not do immigration enforcement. That's the federal government's job. And that's important because I want immigrant communities in Colorado to know that if you call law enforcement because you're a victim of a crime, that's not going to mean you're going to end up having immigration authorities threaten to deport. Third point we mentioned is, what about the president trying to bring National Guard or other military presence to Colorado as part of some effort? This issue is now being decided in the courts. There was a decision recently in California, and the decision says quite clearly the president cannot use the military for domestic law enforcement activities, period. Now, there's an exception, or insurrection, or a true national emergency. Your face already gave me the follow-up question. What if the president doesn't respect the court's rulings? I understand the question. It's fair to be worried. I will say, thus far, the courts have ruled and said people are entitled to due process of law, and the administration has thus far said they are going to follow that. I will tell you, it's an 80-20 issue. When you ask the public, do you believe the president needs to follow the law and the rulings of the courts, 80% of people say yes, the president's not above the law. I will make sure to fully enforce and protect Colorado under the rule of law. I will make sure to build as much as we can of a public voice, back to how citizens show up, so that we call for the rule of law and we call for our core freedoms. This is a key moment for America. I don't want to live in a country where whoever president can pick anybody up and ship them to another country without due process of law. If we live in that country, we're no longer a republic, and we've lost our constitutional freedoms. So my commitment is to fight for our freedoms. I'm not, as I've shown, I'm not afraid to stand up against this federal government as they do things that are harmful and illegal. I've done it 35 times already, and we're winning again and again and again. Other questions? Yes?
My name is Lori, and I have a broader question, I think more on a national scale. Do you have a pulse at all on what Colorado would do for mid-decade redistricting? You know, with what's going on in Texas, and now I just heard now Missouri is on the plate. some sort of feeling of what's going on? Could there possibly be a special election to do a one-time deal like California's doing so that we can counteract what obviously is going on within the Republican Party?
Again, I know how many of you are following the news closely, for which you have my comfort and condolences. It's not easy. The latest shock to the system, this is not something that has ever happened before in American history, but it's an organized effort to do redistricting in the middle of the decade with a goal to gerrymander the House of Representatives. And it started in Texas. California has said we're going to match Texas. So my first answer to the question is, the best strategy is to bring a gun to a gunfight, which means if Texas does what they do, California's got to match it, and you got to keep doing it. So if Missouri does it, which is the next game, you got to make sure that someone else is doing it. And then the question says, where does Colorado fit in this? Colorado currently has a 4-4 delegation, even though if you look at the last presidential election, Vice President Harris won Colorado by 12 points. So clearly, you could imagine drawing districts if your goal was to gerrymander, that could be 5-3 or even 6-2. I believe the best game in the world would be independent districting everyone, no gerrymandering at all, competitive elections. I had a brief at the Supreme Court in a case when I just started. It's called Common Cause versus Rucho, where the Supreme Court had a chance to decide the issue. The Supreme Court was presenting the question, is extreme partisan gerrymandering a violation of the Constitution and of the requirement to have equal protection of the laws? And the Supreme Court says you can't have districts that are malapportioned, like Colorado can't have one district with 1 million people, another one with 500,000 people. You can't have racially gerrymandered districts. I believe you shouldn't have extreme political gerrymandering. Well, the Supreme Court didn't agree with my view. The Supreme Court said we're not going to do this. We're going to leave it up to the states. Which invited a lot of gerrymandering that happened in 2020 or 2022. And the gerrymandering that happened then was largely called tit for tat. Each side did it to some degree. Colorado sat out of this because we have an independent district commission. As more and more states are gerrymandering, where does Colorado fit in? Short answer is we have 2 hurdles we have to get over. One is Colorado had a Supreme Court ruling from 2003. This is you can't do a second districting. It's only once per decade. You can't do 2. Also, Colorado has, as you said, well, for a independent redistricting commission requirement, you have to find a way to overcome that as well. If you try to overcome both of those, you have to get something on the ballot, have people vote on it, and then be able to redistrict based on it. And there's just not sufficient time to do that in time for the 2026 elections. So I think that answers your question.
It does, thank you.
Thank you. Yes?
Midterm elections, how fearful should we be as Coloradans? We have to worry about another Tina Peters, we have to worry about the elimination of mail-in votes. What should we do? What should we fear? What should we know?
And your name is?
Therese.
Therese, thank you. For those who don't know the Tina Peters story, it bears repeating briefly because it reaffirms my belief in the rule of law. I prosecuted Tina Peters along with Dan Rubenstein, the Republican district attorney from Grand Junction. And what I want to emphasize is Dan Rubenstein had a choice in that prosecution. He had authority to prosecute it, I had authority to prosecute it. You can ask Christian about this later. Not every prosecutor would have said, yeah, I'll prosecute an office holder from my party and my community. Dan could have said to me, this is a hot potato for me. You have authority here, you take it. He didn't say that. What Dan actually said to me is, because I am the elected Republican in Mesa County, I should lead this prosecution. That's a profile in courage. And I said, Dan, I agree. How can I help? He said, give me your 2 best prosecutors to help me. And I did. Christian knows them both, Jan and Rob. And then he said, by the way, could you lend me an investigator too? And I said, you got it. And the prosecution was done together, his office and mine, and Tina Peters was sentenced to 9.5 years incarceration. The reason that's important is Tina Peters' crimes, she undermined her election equipment, broke her oath of office, broke the law, have made clear in Colorado, no county clerk is going to follow that precedent. There was a story recently of someone from Washington trying to encourage Colorado County clerks to play games with their election machinery. No one touched it. Matt Crane, who's the head of the County Clerk Association, and a Republican, and I were on a national show together. We talked about the importance of protecting the integrity of elections. So from a standpoint of within Colorado, I believe we are holding fast to free and fair elections and the rule of law. You also noted the president has continued to both make suggestions and threaten Colorado, saying things like, I don't like that Colorado has mail-in balloting. If you believe in the Constitution, and I carry one with me to double check, you know the Constitution says the states and only the states decide the time, place, and manner of elections. There was a case I had at the U.S. Supreme Court during the pandemic, so it was a lot of argument. And I argued about Colorado's authority, and I defended Colorado's authority to manage our elections, and we won that case unanimously. This is not a controversial principle. However, the president has said he doesn't like how we're doing it, and he wants to punish us. He's even said, I'm taking Space Command away from Colorado because I don't like how you exercise your constitutional authority. To which I said, well, that could be number 36 case, because you can't punish us for exercising your constitutional authority. So, short answer to your question is, the president has no basis to tell us how to run our elections. It's clear, it's going to be in the Constitution, we get to decide. And if you talk to county clerks in Colorado, Democrats and Republicans, they will say the system of voting we have is working really well. We make it easy, safe, and secure for people to vote. The goal is to get as many people able to vote as possible. And I am proud of our system and will continue to defend it. Other questions? Yes, please.
There's been back to the local issue in Pagosa, there's been a recent proposal to limit freedom of assembly for any groups over 25 to protest or discuss, or actually any reason there are groups over 25, without a permit 30 days in advance and $1.5 million liability insurance. I'm wondering, first of all, if you had any ideas how we should fight that, and what you think of proposals like that.
Is this a city requirement, you're saying, the city of Pagosa Springs?
It was proposed as a city requirement, not county.
Yeah, city requirement.
That any assembly of people over 25 needs 30-day advance permit from the city and $1.5 million liability, talking about supposedly liability issues where there could be trouble.
I have never heard of this requirement proposed anywhere. I would first start with your county attorney, or city attorney, sorry, and just ask the city attorney, have you looked at the precedents under the First Amendment that would govern this question, and are you confident that what you're doing is lawful? And here's the reason why I hope that attorney is really careful. If the city adopts such an ordinance, there is a number of groups out there, including the ACLU, just to mention one, and I know the person you can contact, who would probably be interested in looking at what would become a constitutional challenge against this ordinance. And assuming that group won that challenge, the city would then owe all the attorney's fees for the challenge. And so if I were you talking to the city, or if the city attorney were here, I would say, Mr. City Attorney or Madam City Attorney, you need to be sure that what you are doing is legal under the First Amendment, because if you do this and you're sued and it's illegal, it's going to cost the city a lot of money and some embarrassment. you might want to be sure you're on solid ground. And so, I don't know what the city will do. This is how our government works. Local governments make their decisions. We are not, as you know, we're not the lawyers for the city, so we're not involved. I have had occasions where city attorneys have called us up and said, you guys at the state level have some expertise, and for example, the First Amendment, what do you think? And if the city attorney wanted to call us up, I'd be happy to put the city attorney in touch with someone who does have a lot of expertise, who can then point the attorney to the relevant precedents, and the city will have to make a decision. And sometimes cities have their attorney say, if you do this, you're going to get sued and you're probably going to lose. And then cities still do whatever the attorney said, don't do it because you'll get sued. So that's a democratic decision that the city council has to make, but hopefully you can ensure that the city attorney is providing some guidance for the city and state. Does that help?
It helps. I think we're still in trouble.
Okay. Well, if this is a done deal and that, call it consultation opportunity, is not one in front of us, then you're in a position of looking for a lawyer who would then sue. And as I mentioned, the lawsuit is one that could be brought in federal court, and it could come with attorney's fees for the city if they lose the lawsuit. And the ACLU does bring cases along these lines. Protecting the First Amendment is one of their core priorities. So I'm happy to share the person who you can talk to, and maybe the threat of litigation will help them slow down a little bit, and maybe there'll be time for consultation after.
I'm Jason. I own several small businesses in the community, one of which is a very tight margin hospitality business. And we tend to see a lot of pressure on our floor with minimum wage rules that are made at the state level, and certainly don't have anything against a minimum wage, but the mismatch of not doing it on a community AMI basis, for example, et cetera. We see things like voter initiatives push through a legislative policy that has real impacts, and you've seen Denver get decimated by its high floor on minimum wage. So I guess my question is, how would we organize, certainly we have the Colorado Restaurant Association, of which I'm a member, my wife's on the board, et cetera, but we're not seeing a whole lot of power and influence because we're relatively small independent business owners. How do we inject rationale to say the AMI in Telluride is different than La Junta, Pagosa, Denver, et cetera, thus a floored minimum wage statewide, and other policies similarly, not just minimum wage? How would we affect some change there and have a voice being small business?
I would say building a broader coalition around the principle that one size doesn't fit all in Colorado is a topic I've heard a lot in a lot of different places. And I was just in Grand Junction last week, and I was hearing from different business leaders there, and they were making a similar point. And as you identify different public policy areas, then the challenge becomes, what's the way to craft public policy that has flexibility, that demonstrates we're not going to treat Pagosa Springs the same way we treat Telluride, take your example, or that we treat Denver. And I've tried hard to always keep that in mind and to stay grounded so that I'm thinking about, are there ways to create, as a regulation, exemptions or waivers so that you're not treating everyone exactly alike. I do think it's an important topic and theme. It's definitely something that's on my mind, and the challenge sometimes is how do you apply it in different contexts. The minimum wage, the way it currently applies, which I take from your question to be sufficient, there is a statewide floor and low gardens can go above it, but I take it from your question, it's possible that for some communities the statewide floor is still pretty high, and that's a open conversation to figure out based on, in that one case, is there flexibility that makes sense? In other policies, there are other ways to achieve flexibility. And I do think the way, to answer your question, the way to approach it is figure out how to build support for the broad principle of one size doesn't fit all. We need to make sure that we have policies that are flexible for a diverse state, there's a lot of diverse communities. Thank you. Time for another question or two? Yes, sir.
My name is Roger Sanchez. This isn't a question from me. There's a person who wanted to attend, but she's sick, so she couldn't. Rachel Suh. She basically asks, excuse me, I'm freezing over here with the AC on me. Attorney General Weiss, today the public was notified you had received funding from a developer for the controversial Pagosa West proposal, and also found out formal complaints have been sent to your office concerning questionable grant funding from the state regarding the development. Can you pledge today that you will return the donation, have your office open an investigation, and enforce the law as it is written on behalf of the concerned Pagosans and Coloradans?
So I did see something today's paper, which is the first time I heard about this development or developer. So I'm happy to look into it and learn more. And as I mentioned earlier, we don't always have authority in all cases. And a lot of times it might be a matter under local authority, but I'm always happy to learn more. All right, final question. In the back, yes, please.
I have a question about when you have a lawsuit between a big dog and a little dog, big dog and an underdog, David and Goliath, for instance, and you work it through the courts, it's completely settled, and you have the scenario settled, but Goliath is completely non-compliant. I appreciate your eye for the law. Can something be done to help the underdog? Because they don't have the funds, it's flagrant non-compliance. What can be done? They don't have money, they don't have time. Whereas Goliath can leave it in the courts forever. What can the underdog do in those situations?
I'll repeat the question, and it's one that I often end up in this situation. I have taken on Google in court, and we have won. I've taken on Meta, protecting kids from harm from social media. I've taken on Big Pharma. I've stopped the merger between Kroger, City Market, and Safeway. Had a couple of town halls in Durango and Cortez on that. I am often that David taking on that Goliath. And the question is, sometimes the Goliath will be undermining any of the rulings in David's favor. How do you make sure that you're getting the relief you're seeking? I'm happy to chat afterwards if there's a specific case that we can be helpful. This is one of the challenges of our legal system, which is you have to make sure to stay on top of things. And the way legal systems should work is if a company or a well-heeled individual doesn't follow the law, there can be sanctions and consequences. What can be hard is if you are the David and you have to keep paying lawyers to get those, that's not easy. And that gets into a category that we talk a little about among lawyers, access to justice. If you can't afford access, do you get justice? And that's part of the hard part of this, which I'm happy to chat. Sometimes there are lawyers willing to do this work on a volunteer basis, sometimes in legal services. Your point is a fair one. We have to fight to make sure we give equal justice for all, and that our system works so that everyone's heard, everyone's protected. I believe in that work. That's why I'm in public service. We have a lot of work to keep doing to keep this republic together, and to keep Colorado as a place that we're in this work together, and that all of us are fighting for all of us and the challenges we're facing, for our kids and their future, for affordable and safe communities we can live in. And I want to make sure I keep having these conversations. This one's been really terrific. Mindy, Christian, and I will stay for a few minutes as people may have further questions or follow-up. I want to thank you guys. This is an incredible turnout for coming in.
Hi, my name is Sydney. Can you elaborate on that concept in terms of Goliath being the current president and candidate, and David being average citizens in terms of not following the law?
Yes. Let me translate this question a little bit, which is, how do I, in this story,
as the David, stand up to the Goliath, the president, and defend the law? And the answer is because when it comes to defending the principles that we believe in, this republic is based on, I am going to be fearless. There's a saying, comes from my religious tradition, the whole world is a narrow bridge, and the important thing is not to be afraid. We all at this moment cannot be afraid. We have to stand up even when it's against lawless action from an intimidating bully. Because if we give in on critical things, and we've talked about a number, First Amendment, due process of law, fair treatment of immigrants, we're going to lose our republic. We're going to lose our freedoms. And so I am going to be fearless to stand for the principles that Colorado believes in and America's founded on, and to make sure that we keep this republic. And I know it's a scary time, and a lot of people are worried, are we going to make it? My message is I will fight like hell to preserve our republic and to make sure that in Colorado we continue to honor these basic freedoms and protect everyone's constitutional rights. That is what I believe this country is about. I believe we're going to get through this moment having gone through what is a challenging time, and we'll learn from it. And on the other side, I want our republic where everyone has liberty and justice. Everyone listens to one another and tries to work together to build a better future for all of our kids. Thank you all very much. Appreciate it.